Spurgeon Root has a mission. The pastor and outreach worker has devoted his life to helping street gang members get out. Drug dealers, violent offenders, if they really want to change their lives, Spurgeon Root is there to help. The city of Regina in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan is infamous for its Aboriginal-based gangs. For Spurgeon Root, this is the heritage of his country's colonial past. North Central, Regina's most crime-ridden neighborhood, and Spurgeon Root's home for the last 20 years. He knows most of the gangs by name: the Native Syndicate, West Side Soldiers, Indian Mafia Crips. But the culture around gangs keeps changing, he says.
There's a Native Syndicate tag, there's a Saskatchewan Warriors tag, and one that I don't recognize. The white one is a Native Syndicate tag, and then there's an X through it, which is, you know, like an act of aggression or a screw you, I don't like you kind of a thing. So this is part of the challenge that we have right now, is that we've got these younger guys starting gangs, and you don't necessarily know who it is, or you see a tag and you recognize that it's a gang tag because it's got numbers and it's got all the, you know, it looks like a gang tag, but you're not necessarily sure who it is or what they're doing or who they're aligned with.
Spurgeon Root says he was on the ground when it all started, working with Aboriginal youth in North Central.
I knew a bunch of the guys that were getting involved, and some of them I'd known for a long time, and I considered them, you know, sort of more like friends in a lot of ways. When your friends are getting involved in things that are really unhealthy and that are hurting them and are killing people, you kind of want to help, I guess.
One of the gang members Spurgeon Root helped was Lester. They meet in a woodshop the pastor started 10 years ago to provide marginalized youth with an opportunity to develop new skills. Lester just got out of jail.
My dad was a good fighter. He was taking on a few of them. I guess it was too much.
Lester's father was murdered when he was still little, he says. He spent his childhood with his grandparents on one of the reserves close to Regina.
You just left him? Left him, yeah. And you said he was 20?
He was 20 years old.
And you were 2?
I was 2, yeah.
Huh. Do you remember him at all?
Oh yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Okay.
As a kid, Lester started to drink and to smoke weed, later using crystal meth. In 2005, he joined the Native Syndicate, one of the most notorious gangs in Regina.
I wouldn't want to like throw a match in a can or something. That wouldn't.
And most of my time in there was just what I had to do. I was kind of an enforcer. You start from a striker to a soldier to, you know, you work your way up there. And from my experience in there, I had to knock around guys, beat them up, show them how much balls I had, and well, I had it right away. And what I didn't like though, like I've seen a lot of beatings. I've seen people get killed and stuff. And I didn't like what was going on. That's the reason why I got out of the gang.
Most of those here share a similar story. A dream of having a family and being accepted, which turned into a nightmare of crime, violence and drug addiction. Most of the gang members of Regina, like Ron, are First Nations. They say they were living a transgenerational trauma.
Well, I thought that was my family, right? I had no family. I grew up in the foster system. Well, a little bit of the foster system, but I grew up in a young age where my mother didn't care about me and her husband didn't care about me, and my real dad was too messed up in biker stuff himself, right? And he died when I was like 11 years old, right? So I got swallowed to the streets, right? That's all I knew. Like, some of my family was drug addicts and stuff. Unfortunately, I seen the money, so I became addicted to money, right? By the time I was 17 years old, I was making like $5,000 a day selling drugs, right?
The gang tattoos still remind them of what they have done and what they have been through. Cody, another former gangster that Spurgeon Root helped, says he joined the Native Syndicate when he was 13.
Money, friends, acceptance. I was giving all that up and, like, you know, starting fresh. Because, like, when I did give it up, I went through a really bad, like, identity crisis. I didn't know, like, if I was the big bad gangster no more, if I should go do this. And it took me a while. It messed me up, man. And it's like, yeah. Careful, honey.
It was because of their children that Cody and Ron decided to leave the gang lifestyle, they say, to be better dads than the ones they knew. Regina has the 7th highest population of Aboriginal people in Canada. And like many parts of the country, Spurgeon Root says, it has its own story of discrimination and racism against First Nations. He takes us to a cemetery not far away from a former residential school in Regina. Such schools were established to remove Indigenous children from the influence of their own families and to assimilate them into Euro-Canadian culture.
Part of where it started, there's a whole, the impact of colonialism and the decision to try and wipe out an entire cultural people group. And there's spots like this all over Saskatchewan, right? Like, this is not an unusual spot, sadly. So when you've got people that are disposable for generations, it's not surprising that they, need to resort to other ways of living.
Boys first came away because I dropped. Yeah.
You guys are gonna have to ask me the questions, whatever you want.
A late visit to Lester, who seems to be going through a crisis.
Another project.
Sure, yeah.
A ton of cleanup done today, so we got some more boards we can get sanded up for the project.
My dad died when he was 20. He never went to residential, but my mom did. And she hurt for a lot of years from the shit that happened to her. And I had to see my mom, I had to see my mom. I grew up around fucking house parties and shit when I was living with her. And well, I'm a smart guy and stuff, so I learned to shake it off. And I have 2 sons now of my own, and I don't want to see my kids go through what, fighting. Oh, I still love it, but I don't do it. I love it when I win. I just get that rush. I don't like to hurt people anymore, though. I don't want to go back to my old life of using drugs and drinking for days and days and days.
Yeah, it's just going to be a couple of days. He said probably till Friday. And then they're talking about paying me Friday already. That's $500. So that's something,
Spurgeon Root is there for him, listening, encouraging, buying, if necessary, grocery vouchers for Lester's kids.
Getting out is, it's not easy, but to an extent you can be out and then you're out, and if you don't go back and you don't mess with the same people and you're not involved in any of that, then you can be out. But the challenge is that people still have all the same addictions. They've got all the trauma still back there.
As a former high-ranking gang member, Ron is still facing consequences from his past. After his release from prison, he lives in a halfway house. And he is determined to help young people avoid his fate.
It cost me my freedom, it cost me that, it cost me my life. Now I'm a First Nations man that helps his community, not poison it by the sale of narcotics, right? I help the kids in the community instead of selling drugs to everybody, right? So it's way better. That's what we're supposed to do in life. We're not supposed to be gang members. We're not supposed to shoot people and stab people and sell drugs. You're supposed to help your community, right?
Community work on Saturday morning. Friends and members of Spurgeon Root's congregation come together to clean up for winter. Gina Marie is also here. Spurgeon and she are Bible college sweethearts, married for 20 years. Together, they decided to raise their daughters in North Central.
I'll never forget my daughter coming home in grade 2 and asking me, "Mom, what's abuse?" And having to explain that, and she just, "But why would a grown-up ever hurt a kid?" And she just, that was so out of her understanding, and she was crying over it because she knew that that was some of her friends from school were dealing with that, and that was hard. It sort of felt like I was stripping her innocence away a little bit. And so sometimes after something like that, we go, "Oh, is this really where we want to raise our kids?"
But they stuck with their decision, believing that they are involved in something that's beyond here and now, and that it's up to everyone to choose what to focus on.
It helps to keep in mind that, you know, that people are changing and good things are happening. It's not all bad by any stretch.
Lester, Ron, Cody and many others. They are the reason for Spurgeon Root to keep hope.